and welcome to the Parenting Playbook podcast. Today I've got Helen with me. Now, Helen is a private health visitor and a sleep coach. So she's been a health visitor for 13 years and a sleep coach for 7 years. She's got four children, 19, 16, 13, and 7. You have a number of complexities within your family with PDA and autism and all
Yeah,
sorts going on, which has evolved over time. Yeah. And
definitely.
so today we're going to talk a little bit about Helen's upbringing, her anticipations of the mum that she was going to be, and also the mum she has become. So welcome, Helen. It's lovely to have you here. So it'd be really good to talk to you a little bit about your childhood and your experiences of being parented. What led you into the health visiting world and
Yeah,
then the parent that you've become?
yeah, okay. So I am the eldest of three,
Mhm.
two younger sisters, both quite large age gaps between us, both 5 years in between each of us. And my youngest sister has got some learning difficulties. She's dyspraxic and dyslexic and maybe has autism as well. So there's quite a lot of complexities in that family as well. There's a lot of sibling rivalry and excellently interesting, wonderfully irritating stuff like that. Mum and dad were mum was a stay-at-home mom for the most part. Dad used to work for the local church, and so we never had any money, but it was always filled with a lot of love. Dad was dad was kind of like, oh, I don't know, I think very fondly of my dad. He's very funny, very warm, very gentle. My mum was very loving in lots of ways, but she was also the disciplinarian. She was the But very, very high standards, impossibly high standards, I would say.
So how old are your parents now?
They've just turned 70, both of them. Yeah.
Okay, so they're 1950s babies.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So mum had me, and then she had my sister, and she was quite poorly after she'd had my sister. She thought it was postnatal depression. It wasn't actually. It was a thyroid problem. But she wasn't listened to, and she felt like she was going crazy because her eyes were funny. She couldn't see properly, and she got agoraphobia. So there probably was a bit of postnatal depression, but she'd got very high, very, very high standards. And I remember every morning I clean, had to dust all the wood in the house. She is so caring and so wonderful. And as a nan now, she is like nothing I've ever witnessed. She's a completely different nan than she was a mum, but she was quite hard to please as a child. I just remember setting my alarm really early, several times. I remember doing this quite often, to clean the whole house
Wow.
before she woke up, to kind of garner some kind of approval. And I'm sure I did, but I vividly remember that feeling of needing to do,
Mm.
whether it was, educational attainment or physically around the house or looking after my siblings, to kind of be good enough.
So you actively sought her approval.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah.
So would that have been because it wasn't readily available to you? As you said, she was very hard to please. So
Yeah.
often when that's the case, we are seeking
Yeah,
approval.
I think it often becomes a vicious cycle, doesn't it? With that kind of relationship, I know one of the things that she jokes about me as a child was that I was always, look at me, watch me, look at me, because I was obviously needing that kind of, this is watch what I'm doing, give me some feedback from
Yeah.
it. So that is a family joke. That is what
Yeah.
I'm always been like.
Okay. So what do you think on reflection now? What was it that your mum wasn't doing that because of course we don't come out of the womb going, look at me,
No.
I want attention. We usually, if we get the attention that we need, we don't then generally seek it. So what do you
No.
think it was that she was doing or not doing that made you feel the need to have to seek that out?
Think it was the arrival of my sister.
Okay.
And the fact that she was quite poorly afterwards, emotionally and physically. And I think it was from that point. My dad at that point had got quite a stressful job, not with the church, with a big company, and he worked long hours. It was the time when the housing market went all to pot, so the mortgage was ridiculous. So I think there was a lot of external pressures,
Mm.
um, and she'd moved away from her mum and dad. They lived in Stoke-on-Trent, which is not a huge distance away, but all her siblings and all the extended family still live there, and she'd kind of come away. So I think I wonder if she felt a bit isolated herself and,
Mm,
overwhelmed really.
mm, mm.
And going from having one child, and I think I was the light of her life. I know that she put a lot of time and effort into me in those early years, I remember. But then when Kathy arrived, I was I was aware of that change and that dynamic change, and whether that was because Kathy was here or whether it was because she wasn't as well as she had been prior to that.
So that would have been quite difficult, as you say, if you were the first child, so it was 5 years later, so you were 5 when your
Yeah,
sister came along.
yeah.
So you will have a memory, I suspect,
Mm,
of being on your own, and then all of a
yes,
sudden you've got to share your
yes,
parents as
yeah,
well. So,
yeah.
yeah. But because when you were just describing her about that needing to get that approval, do you remember that pri pre-5? Do you remember having to get her approval pre-5, or did you feel that it was just there?
I don't remember that. I don't know, and I don't know whether the stories of me being like that are from when I was before my sibling arrived or whether it was afterwards. I'm not sure. I think it was just something that kind of carried on for so long afterwards that
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know
But
when it started.
nevertheless, there's no doubt that the dynamic in the family changed. Then your sister, so there were challenges there, is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So
Okay.
told me she'd got meningitis as a 3-month-old. She was very poorly in hospital.
Mm,
That we thought she was going to die.
mm,
This was when I was 9.5, 10, and yes, she has learning
mm,
difficulties.
mm.
We used to call her Sally Sunshine. She was a little ray of light, but goodness, she was like a wrecking ball. She used to go into the bathroom and she'd knock everything off the sides and turn the taps on and slam the toilet door down and get the toilet paper off the toilet. She'd just go and wreak havoc wherever she went. Bless her.
Sounds like your mum had a hands
She
full. Yeah.
absolutely did. Yeah. Yeah, she really did.
So tell me, as you grew older, there was this needing the approval, which is really interesting because it's almost been flipped, like you're attention seeking, but actually your memory of it was, I just wanted to please her.
Yes.
But the
Yes,
narrative,
absolutely. Yes.
has been flipped, hasn't it? That
Yes. Oh,
you,
definitely, yes. Yeah.
yeah, which I'm just interested in that because when people tend to do that, they label their children. That can be really problematic because then that child then takes that into their adult life and either continues that behavior or almost suppresses themselves because they don't want to be seen as
Yeah.
attention seeking. How did that play out for you?
It's really interesting. So I think probably the latter. So I was very aware that that was a label I had. And I wonder if it stemmed from quite early on. I didn't sleep all that well, I don't think. I used to want to be with people. I used to like adult company. I liked to kind of be an only child. I wanted to
Mm,
be with everybody, very, very sociable, quite outgoing. And so sleep, I think mum and dad used to get quite frustrated with me not going to sleep and not going to bed. And that was a bit of a frustration. I don't know whether they did the kind of whole cry it out, control crying. That's not a conversation I've ever had actually. That's an
mm,
interesting one. Might broach
mm,
that conversation. But after that, I just worked very hard at I got my head down. I was very studious. I did very well in my GCSEs and my A levels. I got a boyfriend and who I then married quite quickly. I was involved with the church. I did everything that ticked the box to gain approval and to
mm,
not kind of stand out.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
From your mum or from your community?
Both, I think. Yeah,
Okay.
both. Yeah.
Okay. So you wanted to be the good,
Yes, want to be a good girl.
good girl.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
absolutely. And did you ever get to a place where you felt you had mum's approval? Or did you get to a place where actually I'm never going to really get it?
I'm not sure. I think now at the age of 44 and going through the things that I've gone through in the last 10 years, I look on it with a lot more grace and patience
Mm,
and I love myself. So I don't need it in the
mm,
way that I did. But whether or not I mean, I think I did get the approval when after I got married and I was doing a really, really good job and I progressed really highly because before I became a health visitor, I was a kids intensive care nurse and I was one of the first people who got a job in that area straight from qualifying. They normally didn't take those people on, but my CV was really good and my portfolio was good and they wanted me to go in and I progressed up the ranks in there really well. But then the things started going wrong in my relationship with my husband. He was really abusive and having affairs, and so there it all kind of crept back in again. That feeling of not being good enough, and
Okay.
that
Yeah, that must have been really difficult.
it really, really was. It kind of feels like it was another person and another time.
Right, okay, okay. So how did that culminate with him?
So I mean, we were together since we were 16. We got married at 21, and it was after we started moving in. So I didn't move in with him until we got married because with the religious background and I was working with the youth club. I'd got a youth club running at the local church and it wasn't deemed appropriate from my mum and dad's point of view that I would be working within the church and living with somebody I wasn't married to. So very quickly after we got married and moved in, things started going
Mm.
wrong.
Mm,
And that carried on for about 9 years.
okay,
And in
okay.
that time I had three of the older children.
Yeah,
And in 2013, finally he left.
okay,
And then everything started getting so much better. So much
okay.
better.
Yeah, okay. So, well, that's a long time to be going through a
Especially when
really
you've got three children who are also being affected
yeah,
by that dynamic.
yeah.
So,
Did your
yeah.
parents know about this?
I don't know. I don't think they did. I don't think they did really until the end. They knew a bit about the affairs, um, but no, I don't think they understood the depth of it. He was a very kind of likable character. He's a police officer. He'd known them since he was 16. They kind of brought him up. He was their child as well. So
Mm,
it was a big
mhm,
blow to everybody. But yeah, that was hard. I don't think they really understood
mm,
exactly what was going on. Uh,
mm,
And actually, I didn't really because I blocked a lot of it out.
yeah,
It kept coming back as flashbacks later on. Then
yeah,
I'd kind of, oh gosh, yeah, there was that, and things start to get pieced together a bit more.
yeah. If you don't mind me asking, you said mum and dad knew about the affairs.
Mm,
What was their advice to you around that? And bearing in mind, there's a religious connection here, there's a faith connection
mm,
here, isn't there? And
yeah,
often within faith, it's you stick with it. You
yeah,
just work through. Marriages are tough. I don't
yeah.
know.
That was never the case. That was never the case with mum and dad. They were always very, very happy to they would have supported me whatever. They were, they'd say, we can do this. If it's financial stuff, we can sort, we can help you out.
Mhm.
They were very good in that way. They just didn't realize the level of control he had over me and the amount that my confidence had just gone to nothing that I didn't feel able to get out.
Yeah,
I couldn't make a decision at that
that's a
point.
really awful place to be. And I think
It was, yeah.
anybody that's listening to this, I think when you've come out the other side of something like that, it's as you said, it's a bit like you look back and think, who was that?
I
Who
know.
was that? Can you remember? Because often we don't tolerate that sort of behavior. The thing is, it can be so small and it just chips away slowly but surely. But generally, from a get go, from a self esteem perspective, if we've got quite a high self esteem, we tend to step away far quicker than
Mm,
if we haven't.
mhm.
So when you started to pick up, whether it be the affairs or as controlling behaviour, I mean, as far as controlling behaviour is concerned, and this is another tricky thing, is very often people can almost because being physically somebody is physically violent to you, it's tangible. You
Yeah.
can explain it. It's a thing. People understand it. But control
No.
is so broad, isn't it?
Yeah.
What one person identifies as control, another person wouldn't.
No.
So I'm just interested in how
Yeah.
that played out for you.
There's an awful lot of gaslighting. an awful lot. So I think even when I recognise that actually no, this
Yeah.
is not right. This isn't don't take the mickey out of me because I've got small boobs in
Yeah.
front of people. It
Yeah.
would then be twisted and
Yeah.
turned around that
Being
I was
sensitive.
well, yes, or I couldn't take a joke, and the fault was on me. And a lot of this was, "Oh, you can't take a joke. You've got no sense of humour." And I pride myself on my sense of humour.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a very good sense of humour.
Yeah. But you
But
don't appreciate being humiliated.
no, no,
No.
not
So,
so
I think that's a really important factor here, isn't it? Is recognizing that if you're feeling humiliated by your partner or somebody, sometimes I think we let our partners do things that we would never let somebody else do. And
that's
sometimes we just have to look and go, okay, if somebody else was saying that to me, how would I feel?
yeah,
What sort of relationship would I want with potential friend if they
yeah,
were going to treat me like that? And really start to gauge it from that
yeah.
perspective, because then we're more able to go, "Oh, no, this doesn't feel right." With the gaslighting piece, they tend to make you feel like you're going mad. There's so
Well, and I did
yeah,
actually get mad. I was actually an inpatient in the mother and baby unit when I was pregnant with Rory. So Rory's my third. I started off with anxiety and depression. I think I'd always got a bit of anxiety. I always had got anxiety from a child. That was a whole other story. But it really reared its ugly head when the affairs started happening and this gaslighting and the control and coercion. Uh, and so much so that when I was pregnant with Rory, my head fell off one night. I had a breakdown. So yeah, I think the other thing, just going back to what you were saying about, what would this behavior, would I appreciate this behavior in a friendship? I always think if your mom or somebody who cared for you was in the room in that setting, heard this, what would they think about it?
yeah,
That's a really good way of, how would somebody else view this scenario?
yeah,
They
yeah.
can kind of
I
think,
think
is this
it's a
how
really because it's really difficult when you're in the situation to be able to see it through another person's eyes. But if we imagine, as you just said, somebody's in the room, what might they take from that? And I think sometimes we have to put ourselves outside of ourselves and look at it from an alternative perspective to be able to. I also say to people when around affairs actually. If you're in a bar talking to somebody, just imagine your wife is standing right behind you, or your
yes,
or your husband is standing right behind you. What would they think if you were having this conversation, if they could hear this? And if they would not be happy, you've got to seriously think about that conversation that you're
yeah,
having,
yeah,
so as to not get into something too deep before it's too late.
completely, yeah,
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 so it sounds like, and you just mentioned that you had anxiety as a child. So again, that's not a huge leap. If we anxiety in childhood, that can often be linked to our self-esteem, and then we lean into relationships that maybe not the best for us. And again, one of the things I am saying quite a lot is our mental health in childhood really shapes our future mental health and our decision making. And our decision making is surrounded by our mental health. So if we have high self-esteem, we're likely to lean into people that are good for us and to
mhm,
us. Whereas if we don't have high self-esteem, we're likely to lean into people that aren't so good for us. And it sounds like you can see that correlation
oh,
of
definitely, yes,
how
yeah,
you got into that relationship with Phil.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
and
completely,
then in 2013, he left.
yes.
Um,
It was absolutely horrific at the time. I actually begged him to come home, which was, I'm mortified now when I think about that, but it just highlights the desperation that I was in at that point. But now in hindsight, yeah, that was the turning point really, and the turning point of me gaining some level of self-confidence and starting to like myself.
Yeah. But again, how many women that could be listening to this that have done exactly what you just described?
Yeah.
Of it's better to be with somebody that's not good to us because it's the known than it
Yeah.
is to lean
Oh
into the
gosh.
unknown.
Yeah.
Because
Oh gosh, yeah. When you spend all day and night frightened,
yeah,
do something that's potentially worse, because you don't know,
yeah,
or at least it's unknown, and that's
yeah.
frightening in and of itself is just a step too far often.
Well, again, what we want is control. And
Yeah.
actually, in a strange way, being in an environment that is the known, albeit dysfunctional and toxic,
Yes.
is somehow your control and you hold on to that. Whereas actually going into the unknown is um, even more scary, which is bizarre, really, isn't it? Because if you
Yeah.
think about it, the level of fear and trepidation and uncertainty that you may have had would have been so profound,
Yeah.
yet something different was even scarier. And I suppose a message here, from my perspective, is nobody deserves to be treated in a way that is in any way detrimental to their overall well-being, whether it be how they're spoken to, the way they're treated physically, emotionally, and mentally. We see this in relationships all the time, this power, this desire for power and control. And if somebody is, controlling you or has power over you, trust me, on the other side, it's far better, because I don't think there's any woman that has come out of an abusive relationship that's gone, yeah, I sort of regret leaving that
I
relationship.
know. I
That
know.
I
You
that I
think it's
don't
different. You think it's different, don't you, for you?
Yeah, but I don't think that's ever happened. I don't think there's any woman that ever said that, or any man for that matter.
No, no. And I think
So
when you bring children into the kind of melting pot, I remember thinking, I don't want to be that family. I don't want my children to be from a broken home. They already were from a broken home because I was broken. Actually, when from 2013 onwards, the level of security got so much better and so
yeah,
much more palpable.
yeah,
Uh, but at that time, you just think, oh my goodness, I don't want my kids to have that stigma, and
yeah.
what does that mean financially? And oh dear,
Well,
yeah.
all of it's behind closed doors, isn't it? What society sees, you're a 2.4 children and a dog
Yeah.
family, and you're just the idyllic little family. But actually, what goes on behind closed doors, and this idea of being a single parent,
Mhm.
that's a bit of a that's confronting for many people.
Yeah.
And how are you going to navigate that? The finances, everything that goes with that can be really, really challenging. But it sounds like both you and the kids went through some challenging times with Phil.
Yes.
But you
Gosh, yeah.
said you came out the other side, and can we just have a look at how you were parenting the kids when Phil was around and then when he wasn't?
Yeah. So I suppose when he was around, I was very I I think I had to almost undo the stuff that he did.
Mhm,
So I'd go around mopping up the tears and, putting them back together emotionally and, taking them away from the situation. I couldn't go to the shop on my own. Daisy would have to come with me because she didn't want to be left without me. So I think it was very much a kind of protections, whereas I couldn't protect myself, but I could protect them.
mm,
Uh, I don't think my parenting style has changed. I am and always have been quite relaxed,
mm,
uh, not particularly strict. I've got boundaries and there's non-negotiables, absolutely.
mm,
But I am quite relaxed. And me and all my children have got a very, very good relationships that we can talk about anything.
mm,
And that is, gosh, you couldn't put a price on that. I'm just so glad
mm.
that I've created an environment of trust and mutual reciprocity, really, that they feel like they can speak to me, even if it's something that they know I'm going to be cross or disappointed or sad about.
So your children don't seek your approval?
No, 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 I don't think they do. I think Daisy, who is such an overachiever, she seeks a lot of approval based on her educational attainment. And I have to kind of say, actually, you could get a lower grade in this, but I'd be more proud of you if you managed your emotional well-being and your mental health and stop striving for
Mm.
perfection.
So stop putting
That's
yourself under pressure
yes.
to
Get
have this
yeah.
educational achievement. Right. Okay. Yeah.
That's an ongoing thing, an ongoing this perfectionism. But I wonder if that's to do with maybe autistic tendencies as well. Not sure, but
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is something I am aware of, and I don't want her to feel like she needs my approval because she has it. She just
Yeah.
has it there. She's got
Yeah.
it.
And that's the thing, is she automatically has it.
Mm.
And that's not something that you felt you had with your mum. So it does sound like you've broken that pattern.
Yes, well, I hope so. Gosh, yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
mm. Because if you were to look at your grandmother, would your mother have sought your grandmother's approval?
I think she knew that she wouldn't have had it.
That's
I don't
interesting.
think she even I mean, my mum was a bit of a wild child, I think.
Mm,
I don't think she think, my nan my nan was fabulous, but I don't think she approved of a lot of what my mum did. Mum was even I don't know, that's a really good question. I think she sought her dad's approval.
right. Okay. So it doesn't necessarily need to be gender
No,
specific. So
no.
she sought dad's approval. So that does link into your generational patterns then. Mm,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
And again, I think it is a sign of the times. I think like my dad, he was 1940s and he was a good man,
yeah.
but he was one of those men, you got 98% on that exam. Well, where's the 100%?
Where's that other
Wow. Yeah, where's that other 2%? So nothing ever felt good enough. Now, I don't think that was with the intent to harm.
No,
It was just with the intent to encourage you to strive for more. But there comes a point, doesn't there, where you get to a point where you're like, "Oh, I'm so done with," because
yeah,
nothing's ever going to be good enough. So what's the point of
yeah,
trying? And many people
yeah,
can get to that place, can't they?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
So when we spoke before, and I said to you about, how are you parenting the same or differently with your children? You went, "Oh, no, 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 very differently to how my parents parented
Yeah,
me." Why do you
yeah.
think that is? Why are you doing it so differently?
I think several reasons. One is because I've had to, because I haven't had that partnership and that kind of I've had to be everybody to
Mm,
my children. I've had to be good cop, bad cop. I've had to, so I've had to make sure that I'm not one or the other. I've got to try and get a very level balance because I don't want to be passive and I don't want to be, aggressively strict. I think also a lot of the way I was brought up and the parenting styles that my parents use on me, I know has been damaging, and so that isn't something that I would ever knowing that, I wouldn't choose to replicate that, and they did what they had to do
mm,
with the information that they had at the time and the
mm.
skills that they got and the knowledge that they've got, but in hindsight, I can see that there are definite things, well, I can pinpoint that to that. And also I just wanted to have I knew I didn't want to be best mates with my kids because I think that's a step too far for me. But I knew I wanted to have a relationship that was based on equality and mutual respect.
Okay, that's
And that
interesting. And then that's not how it felt when you with your parents, or
no.
even now?
Yes, now, absolutely now. Yeah. I think I think my mum is she is somebody who has got a lot of opinion on a lot of things, and she comes at it with what you need to do, or next time you should have, or next time you shouldn't do this, or what you should have said is. And I am the worst person for taking criticism. I find criticism so hard to stomach. So I knew, and one of the reasons why I went into health visiting after I was a nurse, I knew I wanted to support families, but in a completely non-judgmental, completely
Mm.
non-authoritarian
Yeah.
way, and I only ever give advice if somebody specifically asks me for it, which is kind of counteractive to what a health visitor traditionally is, but it's worked for me, and that's what
Yeah.
I wanted to bring into my kids' home. Remember the other week, one of them was having issues with a boyfriend-girlfriend situation, and I was listening, and I said, "Do you want me to tell you what I think about this, what my experience is in this situation?" And we'd spoken about this kind of thing over a couple of weeks, and the first time they said, "Yeah, yeah, I do," and I explained, and then we had another conversation a week or so later. I said, "Do you want me to tell you what my opinion of this is?" And he said, "No, I don't."
Mm,
And I said, "That's fine.
mm,
That's fine.
mm.
Understand."
So again, we're talking about respect there, aren't we?
Yeah.
Respecting
Yeah.
his boundaries as well.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
he wasn't ready to hear
Yeah.
whatever it was that you were prepared to
No.
provide for him, but he knows that you're there if he needs to have that conversation.
And it turned out that a few days later, we did end up having a chat about the thing, whatever it was that was going on, and he said, "What was it that you wanted to say to me?" And I said, and he was in a position where he could hear it
Yeah. Yeah.
and use it.
Yeah. And again, I think this is a generational thing, isn't it? That Parents did the dictating. They told us what to do, how to think, how to feel, how to behave, what everything. And I think, in the 70s and 80s, we started to evolve as a society and
Mm.
started to find our voice. And
Mhm.
this is where I think a lot of the older generation now will go, "Oh, these youngsters, they've just got no discipline. Clip round the ear wouldn't do them any harm, blah, 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 blah." But the thing is, what they fail to understand is it's that clip round the ear or the way in which that they didn't know any differently, to be fair. A majority of them
Yeah.
didn't know any differently. I'm absolutely not demonizing them, but it's exactly those sorts of behaviors and the ways in which that children were communicated with that has created this backlash really of a whole bunch of the next generation were like, I'm going to be hands off. Now there's a middle lot here that are going, well, I'm not going to be hands off, but I'm not going to be hands on either.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really difficult pathway to navigate, I think, because you know what you don't want to do, but equally you don't want to swing the other way. And it sounds like you had that in your mind's eye as well. And I
Yeah.
certainly, as a parent myself, I certainly very similar. Just didn't. I knew what I didn't want, but I didn't fully know what I did want. I just
Yeah.
knew that I couldn't do it completely the opposite way.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's
So
interesting, isn't
so
it?
yeah, so building relationships, building respect, building communication with the children so that there's some transparency and openness so that they can come to you and have that soft place to land.
Yeah. And to know that even if I don't agree or if I disapprove, it's safe. We can
Yeah,
talk it through and there won't be any judgment. There won't be any,
yeah,
talking things through and coming to an understanding of whatever it is and being able to find your way through situations with the help of somebody supporting you works so much better than somebody saying, right, do this, turn left, go there.
yeah,
You navigate it yourself and you don't find
yeah.
yourself in the same situations when you've worked your way out of a situation.
And what you were saying earlier was that mum sort of did that when you were with Phil. She was saying,
Mhm.
but it sounds like she was giving you solutions. Is it
Yes.
right?
Oh,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes. So
So
it's
this
a
is the difference.
space listening.
Yeah,
Just, sometimes I'll say, well, I can't. I mean, there's never a situation where I can just go and vent. I
yeah,
can vent with my dad. I can say, "Oh my goodness, this and that," and then they said this, and he'll just be like, "Oh gosh, that sounds really tough." Whereas my mum will come up with solutions,
yeah.
and it's from a place of love.
Of
It's from a
course.
place that she doesn't want me to be in this situation. She doesn't want me to feel the way I'm feeling. She
Yeah,
wants to fix it for me,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's a control thing as well, isn't it? It's
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also it's neurological as well because our brains, I think there's like a bit of a continuum when we look at the male and female brain. One end is the male brain, the other end is the female brain, and we're all somewhere on that continuum.
yeah,
I'm not suggesting that women have female brains and men have male brains, but I think it's looking at the strengths within that neurological
yeah,
system. And
yeah,
actually, many females, we know that men are often very much solution finders,
mhm,
whereas as females, we tend to lean more towards the feelings, the empathy, in the way in which our brains work. But actually, there are many women in the world that are fastidious solution finders. They're,
yeah,
to fix a problem, they don't want you to be sad, so let's fix it. So,
yeah,
and it sounds like, whereas dad, on the other hand,
yeah.
almost tips the other side, doesn't he?
Yes, absolutely. Very
Mm.
interesting.
But a lovely
Yeah.
balance in many ways because
Yes.
you
Oh,
haven't
there.
just got this, oh dear, it's really sad, and no guidance, but yet you've got this really, in a way,
Yes.
you have a bit of a lovely balance, albeit annoying.
They have, yeah, they have together.
Yeah.
The 2 of them together are just they're great.
They
One
bring
of 'em great. They bring the best out in each other often,
and
yeah.
they bring different things to the parenting
They
table,
really
by
do.
the
They
sounds of
really
it.
do, yeah, yeah.
And it's really lovely, isn't it, that we've now got this generation and the next generation that knows more about the importance of that emotional development in children. So you said earlier about having anxiety as a child. I suspect that nobody really knew it was anxiety, but is that an on reflection thing?
No, I think they did. I mean, I actually went to go and see a psychologist. I was pretty poorly with it when I was about 12, 13.
Mm,
Um, I don't remember seeing this bloke many times, and I don't remember quite how it kinda navigated its way better,
mm,
but it
mm,
it did.
mm,
Kinda waxed and waned, I think. But yeah, when I
mm,
was 12, 13, it was
yeah.
pretty significant.
Yeah. So tell me about your work history and how that leans into your experiences, and also, I suspect it sort of really impacts how you are still parenting your children, because your children are still quite young.
Yeah,
They still need to be parented.
I do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I do. Yeah, I think I went into PICU because I was dealing mainly with parents. I mean, I was looking after children, but I was actually just looking after body functions, and because
Yeah.
generally they were attached to ventilators and machines and all the rest of it. So I was looking after machines and parents.
Yeah.
And so I loved that. I loved kind of nurturing the parents and building them up, and then so it felt like and I always knew that I wanted to be a health visitor because my mum's health visitor when she'd had Kathy was just so wonderful, and she used to come over every day, and I remember mum speaking so highly of this lady, I still remember her name was Pat Wood, and, I remember her just being this ray of sunshine and just bringing mum out of this depth of despair that she was in. So I knew that I carried on wanting to work with parents, despite the fact that I'm a health visitor and a kids nurse and got 4 children. I don't really like children that much. To be honest with you, don't tell anybody I've said not gonna go down well, all that well, but it's parents that I just love.
Yeah.
And I know how parenting can be brilliant and how it can be not so good. Yeah, so I just wanted to support parents to do the best that they could with what they'd got. And
Yeah.
then went into sleep. That was 2 reasons. One is that when I was young, when I was 12, 13, when I was very, very anxious, my anxiety was around not being able to sleep and being sick. I think that was another little thread of it. And every night I used to by tea time, I'd be in a panic and starting to feel incredibly unwell and very, very anxious. And I would, oh gosh, I'd got myself into a righties. And unfortunately, I think mum and dad at that point they've got both my sisters and they've got not much patience. And so I was told to get into bed, shut the door, I don't want to see or hear you again, which made things so much worse. And then when I was in this relationship, it was always at night time that the abuse would kind of
Mhm.
crank up, or I'd find out there'd been an affair. And
Mm.
it's at night time when I had my mental breakdown. And
Mm.
I went for 4 weeks and I didn't sleep. It had about 40 minutes here and there. And so I was by that point I was on my knees and recognizing that kind of the loneliness, the isolation, the way thoughts are twisted in the depths of the night.
Mm. Mm.
That's why I wanted to go into sleep, I think, because it's a method of torture.
Mm.
Sleep deprivation is a method of torture in some
Mm.
countries, and making people feel not so alone in those
Yeah.
wee small hours.
'Cause nighttime is so long, isn't it, when you're not sleeping?
I know. Whenever my kids have felt anxious, it's always been at night time, and I always say it's the worry bugs. It's the
Yeah.
bedtime worry bugs, and it's
Mm.
always the same. You
Mm.
just can't seem to get a grasp on reasonable thought at that time.
Yeah. And I think what happens is our mind quietens from the day, and that's where all the subconscious, all the stuff that's been stored sitting there that's worried us then comes to the fore. All of that is still there, and we're aware that it's all there, but because our mind is so busy during the day, that's why it tends to come at night.
That's so interesting, yeah. That makes absolute sense, doesn't it?
I think
Yeah.
what's really interesting, just something I'm sure you already are aware of this, but you said earlier about, I always wanted to be a health visitor, and your mum had such high regard for her health visitor. So I don't know whether you've ever put
I've
those.
not I had not even thought about that.
So I wonder if you ever did want to be a health visitor, or it was just at that young
That's
age,
the
right?
way I
That's the way I get her
oh
approval.
my goodness. You are very good. That is very telling, yes.
But
So
this is what happens. I can't tell you how many people I've seen over the years that are in their 50s going, I never even wanted to be an accountant. My dad wanted me to be an accountant, so I was an accountant. You
yeah,
hear it all the
yes,
time, but
yes.
often that there's an awareness there at that point. But yeah, I just thought I'd highlight that.
Not even thought about that ever.
Mm.
Oh my word, yeah.
Should we pause now?
Good grief. Oh, good. And, interestingly, I tell you what, this has just opened another realization door. But just recently, there's become a position at my mum and dad's church to be a community worker, to work with schools and the community to bring people into the church. And I have got all the skills and knowledge to do that job, but it's £12 an hour. Now
Mm.
I'm trying to build this business, and I was seriously thinking about ditching this whole kind of essential parenting thing to do this job within my mum and dad's church. And now I think about it, the only reason, because I wouldn't don't wanna do it. I don't want to do, and I've said no, I've come to the realization, but the reason I've said no is because the only reason I was thinking about doing it is because it would gain that approval.
Yeah.
That is a mic drop
So at
moment.
44, you're still seeking mum's approval at that deeper level.
What's that about?
Programming, it's all part of our programming. So when our parent has uploaded a piece of data that says, you need to seek my approval, or to get my approval, you have to work really hard,
Yes.
then it's just within our framework of thinking. And we
Mm,
continue to do it, even in the smallest of things that we don't
mhm,
realize. But actually, jobs are fundamental.
mm.
Career choices are fundamental,
Yeah, yeah, they are.
and when you said that about she just thought the world of this house visit, I was like, wow, that there it is right there.
Yeah. I think that's
Who knew?
what you did. I didn't, but there we go.
It'll be interesting to see how that percolates for you.
I am gonna keep that in the back of my mind now.
Yeah.
Not that I think it's, not that if every time I'm thinking, "Well, this would approve, oh, my mum and dad approve of this," I'm not gonna do it, but I think it's good to add it to another layer of questions for yourself.
But you know what it might do? And this takes me back to the conversation we had when we first spoke. You're holding on to this health visitor term,
Yes.
but actually you're doing very different.
Well,
You're
yes, 'cause actually I'm calling myself a parenting consultant, aren't I? Which isn't
a
that's
health
not the same
visitor.
best thing.
But it's almost like you desperately, because you were saying to me about, "I am a health visitor, I'm a private health visitor, but actually that's not really a business, but this parenting thing that I wanna do is a business." And,
Yeah.
but it's almost like you're struggling to get rid of the title,
Yes.
but is that because then your mum can't say, "My daughter's a health visitor."
Yes. I'm gonna need a glass of wine and a good long think about this after this.
Just see how it percolates,
Yes. Well
that's
done.
landed.
Yeah.
But what I would say is just allow it to just play out, and you
Yeah,
might
yeah.
find it might be as simple as actually it just frees up what you want to do because
Yeah.
you're not trying to hold on to this
Mm.
title that is nothing other than something that you've attached. Because your mum was going through a really tough time at the time,
Mm.
wasn't she? So of course she's going to want this angel to come in and fix everything for her. So that wouldn't have necessarily have been her saying you need to be a health visitor.
No, not at all.
But
Yeah.
you just saw she gave that woman something that you weren't getting.
Yes. I love it. I love it. It's interesting, isn't it?
It's
Unpick
fascinating.
these things.
Yeah, and this is the thing is that's what I help people to do.
Mm.
Just to see, because it doesn't, all it means is it gives you information that you can then choose to do something with it. When you don't know it, you can't do anything about
No.
it.
No.
But just that little nugget of information there for you is now potentially going to percolate through and go, okay, what can I might not want to do anything with that.
No,
I might be
no.
quite happy with
Yeah,
keeping
yeah.
that, but I'm really glad I know where it comes from.
Yes. Yeah. I love it.
Fascinating, eh?
I don't think you should edit this out because I think this shows your magic.
Gold.
Really. Yeah. It's important. It's important
It
to
is
know that even at
important.
44, we're still unpicking.
Yeah,
We're still unpicking.
actually, going from that around that realization that, oh, maybe I wanted to be a health visitor to get mum's approval and I didn't even know it. That little piece of information right there has changed the shape of your life in a way that if you hadn't have had it,
Yeah.
just that seeking. I mean, it's not to say that you wouldn't have been a health visitor or you wouldn't
No,
have been an
no.
ICU nurse. I mean, I don't know how. All credit to you. ICU with children. I can't imagine how difficult that must have been for the parents to stand
Oh,
alongside and watch the parents' pain and agony in that role, but then to want to go on to do something that is so enriching, I think is incredible. But going back
yeah.
to that subconscious programming, when it comes to your children, what do you think, especially your older ones, because they'll be at an age where they're starting to think about their futures.
Mhm.
Do you think they had any thoughts of, well, my mum would like me to be this or my dad would like me to be that?
I don't think so. I mean, I think they know that I just want them to be happy. And Daisy's got to uni. She did so well in her A levels. She's doing an amazing degree, amazing uni. She's destined for wonderful things. But that's just one part of her. And so
Mm,
that they know whatever they choose to do will be okay as long as they do it with love, and that's a passion, because that's what they want
yeah,
to do.
yeah,
It's interesting that Daisy and her boyfriend, they've been together for a little while now, and she's 90. They're talking about having children, and they talk about they say things like, "Well, we won't do cry it out or control cry. We'll only have very gentle sleep technique." That's it, because this is what I say, and I kind of hear myself. Luckily, it's stuff that I approve of, but sometimes there's stuff that they could come out with that is not necessarily quite as helpful.
but it is interesting, isn't it? And I don't know about you, but when my daughter talks about having a family, I've said to her, because I do what I do, that I'm not expecting you to nail this, just FYI, because you are not going to nail it. None of us do. It doesn't
No.
matter how much we try our absolute best, but crikey, we make mistakes. But just
Oh,
know I'm here to support you 100%. I'm not here to judge.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
I
hard
think
though,
that
isn't it? When it's our profession, we've got to be really cautious about them feeling like they're being watched, or
yes.
I think that's really, really
And
important.
for the partners,
Absolutely.
I think that must be incredibly scary. If I think
Yeah.
about my son having a wife, and that wife having a child, and you've got me, parenting consultant extraordinaire, 26 years experience,
Yeah.
breathing down your neck,
Yeah.
would be a really, really
Yeah.
scary thing at the best of times.
And as people in this field, I think we have to be, as mums, we have to be very, very cautious about how we influence our children so that they don't feel this pressure to be absolutely slamming it. Because, as I say, I don't think any of us do.
No, I mean, when I think about Daisy, I did cry it out with her, not cry it out,
Mm,
but control cry. That was a technique that was advised to do
yeah,
for me from my health visitor,
yeah,
and that's what I did because I didn't know better.
yeah,
And so I could spit myself up with guilt,
yeah.
but actually it's about learning and trying to do better, isn't
And
it?
this is
And
the thing, it wasn't that long ago, but the naughty step was a thing. And Joe, super
took 'em off.
nanny. Yeah, so she was big on the naughty step, wasn't she? And and it was something I used in my home when
Yes, I
kids were
mean,
little.
no,
And this is why I'm here doing what I'm doing, because actually what I know was I could put a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old on the naughty step. But you try putting a 10 and 15-year-old on the naughty step, it doesn't work. By that time, the respect has shifted because the naughty step is about control. It's not about boundaries. It's not about respect.
no,
It's about control.
no,
And and this is what I want to help people with, is to help them to see that we can actually navigate this path with huge respect for our children. And by modeling that, we get that respect back when they're older.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I used to do time out. Now I do time in,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
What
I'm
does that look like?
well, it looks like hugs and time spent and understanding and talking and listening and figuring out a way together.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I give myself a time out.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, right, I'm going out there.
Yeah.
Just leave me alone for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a different concept, isn't it? That's kind of self-preservation, I think, often.
I think that's really important because I think that stops us from reacting.
Mhm,
It enables
mhm.
us to respond because we go and take a pause, we take a breath, go,
Yes.
okay, what I actually want to do is just tell everybody to leave me alone and go away. But actually, what I'm going to go do is go back in there and try and resolve this problem. So, because we're all human beings and we've all got a foundation, should I say, that we're coming from our own childhoods. And we are just trying to navigate that in the best way that we can. And listening to our own emotional triggers is really important, but understanding them and being able to diffuse them by taking a breath, stepping outside. I'll be back. And actually, by that time, everybody's calmed down a little bit, because if we're dysregulated because our children are dysregulated, it's a perfect storm.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm,
Absolutely. Just sets fireworks off left, right, and centre,
yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah. One thing I did want to ask you, because you've got Daisy who's 19 and Evie who's 7,
Mhm.
that's 12 years difference. Parenting Daisy will, again, I would imagine by the time you had Evie, was a very different. You were different.
Absolutely.
You'd had
Yeah.
more years in the parenting field.
Yes.
Do you think that you have raised them very differently?
I don't think I've had the opportunity really to parent Evie in the same way because of the complexities that she brings. So from when she was 6 months old, it was very obvious that there was something that was quite different from her. And she was very, very high need and very sensitive. So I've had to very quickly change the way I parent Evie. Daisy, Jack, and Rory parented them quite similarly. Evie has absolutely 100% needed a different technique in almost every area because
So
of the
you have parented her
I
differently, not
have,
just
yeah, but
because
it's
of the
not
times, but
yeah,
because of her
yeah.
needs.
But it's not been because I thought, "Well, I don't wanna do that like that this time." It's the in case of that just would not have worked.
Yeah. Okay. But again, if we think about it, 20, 30 years ago, it would have been irrelevant. That
Absolutely.
every child would have got. So I just want to acknowledge you for that, that her needs are different to what Daisy's needs were. And as a result of that, you pivoted and changed what you were doing. 20,
Yeah,
30, 40 years ago, that wouldn't have happened. Every child would have been raised in more or less the same way,
you're absolutely
regardless of their needs,
yeah, yeah.
unless
Yes,
they had some physical disability that was obvious.
yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's so interesting.
So well done, you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So tell me now what you're going to be doing in from a business perspective. So parenting expert.
Parenting consultant all the way now. Goodness me. I think I'm still working on support packages. I've created this kind of whole bespoke support package from antenatal to 2.5. And now what I'm going to do is start pulling those bits together so to offer things month by month and knowing that you've got some kind of support and somebody that you can, pick up the phone or WhatsApp or whatever
Yeah.
and having that continuity, having that one person, having that relationship really, I think is so important that people haven't got these days. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to build people up,
Yeah.
empower them to trust their gut and
Yeah. It does sound like, though, despite the challenges that you had in your childhood and all the challenges in adulthood, really, you've built a great relationship with your children. You're still navigating parenting. Of course, you are, like any of us are. You never stop being a parent, even when they're older. But it sounds like you took some of the good stuff from your parents and left some of the stuff behind that you maybe didn't appreciate quite so much. And this podcast has maybe given you a little bit food for thought for a couple of other bits.
but yes, it has, yeah. Maybe I'll come back and pay for a session with you at some point.
Well, hopefully just that realization is going to provide you with some enrichment, really, and just some food for
Yeah,
thought, really.
it has.
Um,
It's very empowering when you realise, gosh, yes, that's why that is. Yeah.
and that, to me, is what this is all about, is helping people to see, oh,
Yeah.
that's why I do what I do, or that's why I say the way I say it. Oh, okay. Now that it lightens everything up, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, I didn't know that. Now I do. I feel a bit better for knowing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, even if you don't make any changes with that
No,
knowledge, just that knowledge, it does help to inform you moving forwards. And
100%.
just another piece of the jigsaw, isn't it? I
Yeah,
think.
and it's really tiny stuff like manners, table manners. Some people, when I was a child, and I understand why it was. I was told I had to eat all my food off my
Yes.
plate, and I know that why that was, because my parents were born in the 40s. Their parents had no money. Food was very scarce. Now, by the 70s, wasn't quite so much.
And
And actually, what we've seen is lots of people that were almost forced to empty their plates. They've got this wonky relationship with food now.
Completely,
So it's
completely.
tiny stuff like that that you
Yes,
see. So did I make my children eat all of their food off their plate? No, I didn't. Because I realized that that was a generational bounce, and actually it hadn't served me particularly well, but I understood where it came from. I
yeah,
understood it came from love and it came from deprivation in many ways,
yes.
you know?
Actually, that's really interesting because I felt exactly the same way, and I've gone bit too far the other way. So I can be quite wasteful and make too much. Yeah, my mum and dad came over for some dinner, and there was way too much.
Yeah.
My pendulum of that has swung
Yeah.
way too far the other way. I need to bring him back.
Yeah, but it's tiny things like that that so it's not even the big deep dive stuff, it's the
Yeah,
smaller things that, "Well, why do I do that?" "Oh, the reason I do that is X, Y, and Z."
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, "Well, yeah, I quite like that actually.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna leave that in situ."
right.
Or, "Actually, I do wanna change it." Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Self-awareness, isn't it?
absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. What I'll do is I'll, include all of your socials on this podcast as well so that people can access you,
Lovely.
should they want to. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
appreciate it. Yeah, really good.